Recording.
Welcome in, everyone. Welcome to Tuesdays and Thursdays with Care Patrol. We're so happy you're here. Welcome in. We have many people joining us as I'm speaking to you. Today is Thursday, and our presentation today is a live CEU, and it is on I'm trying to get the title to pull up, y'all. It's Ethics and Cultural Diversity. I actually knew that, but I was stuck with technology, which is sometimes my curse. So today, Thursday, we're doing Ethics and Cultural Diversity. We're so glad that you're here. We appreciate you, any of you who've been with us through the month. We've been doing ethics topics throughout the month, and on this upcoming Tuesday, the 21st, we'll do medical ethics. This is a live, as all of our CEUs are considered live by the boards of social work and nursing who credential us. So Tuesday of next week, we'll do medical ethics. And then on the 28th, which is the following Tuesday, we'll have Dr. Chandler Caldwell, who will do the ethics of self-care. And so, you know, this is newly needed for renewal for social workers. So we'll be happy to welcome Dr. Chandler in or Dr. Caldwell in, rather, excuse me, on Tuesday, June 28th. On the 21st, we'll do medical ethics. And today we're doing ethics and cultural diversity. Thank you all for being here today. I appreciate you signing up for this. This is a big topic, certainly bigger than any one person, and obviously, you know, big for me, but I will do my best. So a little housekeeping. As y'all know, we're credentialed by the Board of Social Work and by the Board of Nursing for the state of Alabama to credential and create and provide these contact hours. And in order for us to award them to you, we have to ask you to do an evaluation at the end. There's a link here, both in the chat room, if you scroll down, and on the screen, if you can see it, for our evaluation tool, which is SurveyMonkey. And that address I will read to y'all now. It is, if you're ready, if you're taking notes, either with pen or in your phone or somehow scribbling something down, if you're ready, here's the address for the survey following today's presentation. It is https://www.surveymonkey.com/lowercase r/ all uppercase letters X, N as in Nancy, Y, C as in cat, Y, F, W. So again, one more time, https://www.surveymonkey.com/lowercase r/ all uppercase letters X, N as in Nancy, Y, C as in cat, Y, F, W. And thank you so much, Ashley, for posting that in the chat room for everyone who can see the screen. We will get out your certificates by day's end, and I do ask, if y'all will, please do the survey by 6. So if I fail and forget and leave it open and I get surveys later, then I may forget or not realize, unless I happen to look, that you did the survey, and you won't get your certificate, and then I'll feel bad and you'll feel bad. So if you will, try and get your evaluations done today, and that way I can lock the evaluation tool. And if you don't get it in, shoot me an email. My email's on the screen, S Barnes, and that's Barnes with an ES at the end, sbarnes@Care Patrol. The password, Mrs. Ball, Zelia, is not given out until 45 minutes in the presentation. And that's the other way that we satisfy the boards of nursing and boards of social work, who say that because this is a Zoom, we have to be able to prove that you were actually on the call and not just had it on in the background. So we password protect our evaluation, and I'll give that out about 45 minutes into the presentation, which will enable you to open the survey and do the evaluation, and enables me to show the boards of nursing and social work that, hey, you were here and listened for 45 minutes at least, and then did the survey. So thank y'all for being here. I know these are new for some folks who are new to us. So thank you for helping us clear that up, Zelia. So the nurses' hours, y'all, I'll be uploading those to the ABN website when I get the apparatus and know how to do so. And then social workers and nurses alike will get a certificate by the end of the day today. So we've got a few more people here in the waiting room. And I will get us started as soon as they get in. And let me say one thing before I get started. You know, we come to you every week or 6 times a month, and I just want to tell you who we are. So Care Patrol is my business. I started it 11 years ago. There was no such thing in Alabama. Nobody knew what I was talking about. And I'm a placement agent. And what that means is I contract with assisted living communities and senior communities, and they pay me if I bring them a resident. So it's kind of like real estate, only, you know, I'm not paid except by the seller, and only if I sell. And so I'm free to the people I help. And so for those people, I kind of act like a social worker. I try and understand what are their conditions, certainly what are their activities of daily living needs, and understand their budget and other things, and then try and help them navigate the healthcare system as best they can, whether that includes a home health order or a rehab stay or a hospital stay or moving into assisted living, whatever it might be. That's what we do at no charge for them. And that's what I'd like to do for your clients, friends, and colleagues if you ever have the occasion to need someone to educate someone at no charge about the healthcare system and what's in front of them and what Medicare does and does not pay for and how you get Medicaid and on and on and on. So those are the things I like to do, just like I like to teach y'all. So I'd love to have the opportunity to do more of that with your help. And today, let's get into what we're all here, which is to discuss ethics and cultural diversity. And we have 3 objectives. Again, this is part of the need to satisfy the boards. They want us to show that we're teaching objectives, that you're getting those. Please be honest and fair when you answer the evaluation. If I don't do an adequate job, please let me know. I need to improve. Our first objective is to define culture very simply. You know, if we're going to talk about cultural diversity, we need to talk about culture. And so we're going to identify at least 3 types of organizational culture. And then we're also going to be able to list in objective 2 at least 3 examples of the types of 24 types of sort of, so to speak, individual culture, although there really isn't such a thing as an individual culture, so to speak. And then objective 3, we're going to share tips to you, which is what I always want to do in each of these presentations, is to try and give you some sort of tools or resources to take with you after the hour. And so we're just going to share some tips to help you learn how to maybe better respect folks who come from different cultural backgrounds with whom you interact, whether this is at work or, you know, at your child's school or at the gym or, you know, wherever it may be that you exist and enjoy, you know, doing things and being part of the world. Then, you know, how can you better relate to folks in your world? We're going to share some tips about that. So let me let some more people in and we'll get started. And so there are many, many definitions of culture. I know I looked at quite a few. I liked this one best of all. And what it says is that culture is a complex pattern. And this is what I hope to make clear to you by the end of this hour. Culture is a complex pattern of ideas and emotions and observable symbolic manifestations, we're going to talk about that tend to be expected or reinforced and rewarded by and within a particular group. So culture, is many things and has many definitions, but for the sake of our talk today, it's a complex pattern. And there are rewards within that pattern for adhering to that pattern. That's what makes a culture in our idea today. So let's move down through organizational cultures. Each of you are coming to me as social worker or nurse or other clinician. You may be retired, but nonetheless, you are currently within a work organization or an environment, or you have been, and you're still in organizations outside of work. And so let's look at on sort of a macro level then at the start on the different ways that we might identify in certain ways with a certain community. So the first would be national. So each of us likely has the same reaction on the 4th of July as the other, which it is a time when we get together with family and we cook out, and it may involve the water, or it may involve a picnic, it may be a family reunion of sorts, but it's a time to get together and celebrate, not only the family, but the nation and what all that makes us a nation. And so that's a national sense of identity that each of us share. And then each of us also share within that national identity a sort of subset identity, if you will, and one that could even be at variance with other sets within our national identity. And what I'm saying is this: each of us, or most of us, I assume, identify as Southern. We live in the southeastern U.S. We live in Alabama, most of us, some in Mississippi or Georgia, Tennessee, but most of us, we're in the South, the deep South. And so we identify in some ways with that. So we may identify that we feel that people from the South have a different set of manners or values or codes than other people. Or it may be something just completely innocuous, like sweet tea. Now, if you've ever been to like Kansas and tried to get some tea, you find out it's unsweet tea. And the only thing they can offer you is sweet and low. Well, everybody knows sweet and low doesn't make good sweet tea. And they don't have sweet tea. Now, if you're from the South, if you're from Alabama, you will just about argue the right to sweet tea wherever you go. It should be a right. Sweet tea is part of life. So my point is, and while that's maybe a silly example, you can see that even within the construct of the national identity culture that you have and I have and share, we have a smaller identity or subset, which is maybe being from the Southeast or the Deep South or Alabama or South Alabama or Baldwin County. It could be any sort of narrowing down of this sort of social bind that we adhere to, and we'll go down through that. So in an organizational culture, so at your workplace, what culture then is not something that's sort of organic. It's something that's set, and it's set by a leadership team. But really, it doesn't happen. Culture doesn't happen except at the level of the persons who are doing the work. And the daily interaction, that's where culture happens, is daily interaction, where you take into account the differences and the similarities, and you find what works that you can join together with people from differing cultures, diverse backgrounds, someone from Kansas and someone from Alabama trying to do something together. They're going to have different ways of doing things. They're going to have different slang words. And so there might even be a difference there. So it's going to be those folks that make whatever's happens happen. Now, in functional culture, which is also at work, this would be, say, generally in most healthcare settings, you have administration, which is in a way sort of pitted against the clinical staff. And so maybe I think if you see the success of folks getting through COVID, it is probably a marriage where the administrative staff at your workplace and you, the frontline staff, had a plan in which you worked together in some way, but you worked across the sort of natural boundaries. So you're naturally at odds with one another, but in the need for something to happen, you develop this cross-functional ability to work together. And this is what made everything work during you for COVID. It's why you survived. So that's a cross-functional team. It's when teams that are maybe disparate or normally at odds with each other work together. And that's a team culture. So we know that whenever we have a team culture, and this would be maybe the group within the group that you are working, we know that culture is really led by the leader. So if the leader comes early and stays late, it's natural then that the other folks would do the same. If the leader leaves early and is rarely there and doesn't seem to care, that's going to permeate that organization. And so team culture is very dependent on the leader, and it's incumbent on the leader to be versed in cultural diversity, to be able to bring together these various different cultures and the ways that people identify and help them work together across boundaries that may seem at first insurmountable, like that of administration being pitted against clinical staff. And then we're going to get now to what I think is the meat of the story here, which is really the meat of cultural diversity in our country, I think, and in any discussion should be part of the discussion. So we are going to talk about social and identity and group culture. And these are the things that we feel. These are the things that hurt. These are the things that are wrong. This is the diversification of society by gender, by generation, by ethnicity, by religious affiliation, or other social groups. And really what other social groups, you probably could read between the lines, would be those who have sexual identity or sexual gender issues, or not issues, that's the wrong word, but identities is the right word. And so, I expect that for many of you, there are 91 of you here, it's probably ironic to have a 55-year-old white male from Alabama lecture anyone on cultural diversity. It doesn't seem really appropriate. I'm struggling with it, as you might can tell. I mean, I can tell you this, from my perspective, my life is easier than anyone else's on this call because of the luck of birth. Okay? Because I was born at a certain time in the South, white and male. There really is no limit to what I can achieve. I am the only limit I have. And it's not fair. It's not right. I'm not special. I have no special education. I have no special experience. I have no keen talent. I have nothing to bring any differently than anyone else on this call. However, I am probably the person who is getting the call back, you see, if we call someone in need. It has nothing to do with who you are. It has everything to do with the way our society judges people for what they look like, or where they come from, or what they like. And so I know in every way possible, I hope, and I'm open to learning more ways in which I have male privilege and white male privilege. These are the issues confronting our country, I think, is white privilege and white male privilege not bending to the obvious fact that America is changing. Culturally, there are new people at the entryway. And I will talk a little bit later about social media, but social media has given rise to a whole new voice of people who heretofore had no voice. And those are transgender folks. Now, I saw a day or so ago on the news, I think it was, or on the internet, that there are now 1.3 million people in the United States who identify as transgender. So there are about 400 million people in the US. So that's less than 0.25%. That's 0.25% of the US population identifies as transgender. And yet you see that because of social media and because they have people who identify thusly have the right and the ability to have a voice that's on the web, that's not policed or shut down like it would be in their small town or in their school or in their workplace, but on the World Wide Web, their voice is louder. More people hear it and more people say, you know what, I get what you're saying and that's cool with me. Okay, if you need that, that's cool with me. And I think that's maybe what a lot of folks that are threatened by people who are transgender or by people who are Black or by people who are Asian or by people who are female or whatever, is just, you just have to accept that those people, people from different backgrounds have different needs. And it doesn't infringe on our needs as white men of a certain age. And I'm sorry, I maybe this is not an ethical presentation. Maybe this is more of a confessional. I apologize, but I want to make it clear that the thing that separates us are those things that we cannot change about ourselves. And like me, in my case, I actually benefit from those things. Other people do not so much. But identity culture is who we are. So if you're a female, that you're going to make less money than a man. If you're 55 like I am and you need a job, you're not going to get hired over a 25-year-old who could be paid less. I mean, there are just some truisms that are unfortunate but true. And then if you're Black, there's a whole litany of things that you've not encountered. You don't have the opportunities that a white person has, for example, to network with business leaders who can advance your career. You don't have the ability to even think about something like college because it's not in the day-to-day of your existence. You don't have things that are passed down because your family didn't have things to pass down. You don't even sometimes feel that you have a name because your name was given to your family 5 generations ago out of the blue. I mean, think about living with that every day. Do you know living with racism is now considered a trauma? We did a thing on trauma not so long ago, but I want y'all to understand that it is traumatic to be Black in this country, and it always has been. And if you don't believe that, you haven't opened your eyes, or you haven't asked. And that's where we're going with this presentation. So the diversification of society has made cultural diversity and getting along and cross-functional teams much more difficult than before. And so we'll look now at some lighter subjects and individual cultures. And so my point is that while these social identity group cultures, being female, being Black, being gay, being transgender, being white, being male, whatever, being Catholic, being Jewish, being Muslim, whatever it may be that is used against you in a way. That's not all you are, and that's not all other people are. And I think we need to make room for people to be more than one thing, so that they're not just Black. They might also be something else, and we'll find out what here in just a second. So there are 24 types of culture that we've identified here. And quite frankly, there's more than that. There's an infinite number of cultures, really, and you know that. But these are some fun ones that we can talk about, but also ways that maybe can give you some insight into dealing with people on those bigger picture culture issues. So norms are just that. They're really the fundamental building blocks of a culture. So there are certain things that one expects as a norm. For example, we know that we don't raise our voices in the library. That's a norm. Or, and I've had, again, privilege in my life, and I've had the chance to do a little hitchhiking. Thank you, Cynthia, for that sweet note. I was a little nervous there, but so norms, it might be getting in line. People do this all around the world. It's not just in the United States. Every place I've been, people get in line when waiting on something, and they don't break line. Now that's true among all cultures I've seen, and I think it is true among all cultures. People do not break line, and they do line up. This is a norm. It's true for all of us. And then there are roles. Now, we all know roles. You are someone's daughter or son or mother or father or aunt or uncle or social worker or nurse. And so we all know what roles are, but roles are key to part of our cultural identity, right? I am this and this and this. Expectations are really just what is it within the culture that's expected. So if blank happens or blank is said, then what is the expectation of that coming back? That's part of what binds and makes a culture. One example would be I many years ago worked for a woman and her husband who had immigrated from India. They were software engineers, and they're very successful. And we had them over for dinner. So when she came, not only did she bring dinner because it was Indian food. I mean, my goodness, of course, we're going to eat Indian food if we can and not make her suffer through my cooking. But not only did she bring food, but she brought a set of silverware, gold-plated silverware. And this is a truism for folks in India. So imagine what an idiot I felt like when she shows up and I've got nothing for her. And so that is a cultural expectation that she had that I was not privy to. I did not know we gave each other silverware when we met. Okay. But she knew this, and I should have known that. I should have known that, but I didn't. And this is what we're getting to today is let's be open to other cultures and try and act in a way that is accepting of those cultures. So, and there are habits. We have, habits are part of culture. And a habit would be that perhaps you and your colleagues each day at lunch, if you're not listening to me, go for a walk. Well, that's a habit, but you form a culture of the 2 or 3 or 4 of you who make that walk every day. You form a culture. And so that's a habit. Language is not just the language I'm using with you now, or the language of a nation or of a people or of an ethnicity. No, although it is all of those things, language might also be things such as the language of an activity. So if you're someone who enjoys kayaking, there's a language around kayaking that you share with other kayakers. Does that make sense? So language is not just the big sense of language, but a subset of language that identifies you as this or that. And so food is more around a building block, like language, but food incorporates where we come from and who we are, if that makes sense. So food naturally would come from the country of which around us. So if we're Lebanese, we eat grape leaves, right, and goat or lamb, because that's what grows around us. But if we're Native American, we eat corn and whatever else was growing then. Who knows? Cantaloupes, I think. And so that's what you eat. So my point is, food is a very identifying thing as to something very primal in each of us. And then there are events. And so with event, what we mean sort of more than a parade. Well, I'll tell you, here's the event I'm thinking of right now, Juneteenth. Did y'all know? I didn't know this. Like, I used to be in Atlanta, just to be in Atlanta. For some reason, we were there every year at the same time, and every year there was a parade. And I would ask the first year, "Hey, what is the parade in town?" And they said, "Well, it's Juneteenth." And so for a number of years, I thought Juneteenth was a parade in Atlanta. I didn't realize, and y'all may not know, I just learned, and I'm ashamed to just learn, I should have known this again, but I just learned that Juneteenth is a celebration of the various amendments that abolished slavery that all came about in the month of June. Now, correct me, I may be wrong, but that's my understanding of what Juneteenth means, and it is now a holiday. So, that to me is amazing. We've got a holiday now around something. It just shows that things are moving in a positive direction, however slowly, towards recognition of the past in America. And that's what we need to understand is our past, and make peace with that past. And that's not just with slavery. That's with indigenous peoples. That's with Jewish folks. That's with current immigrants. We stole California and Texas just like we stole New Hampshire. Lots of people have fallen so that we can have pride on 4th of July. Just saying. But pastimes that is the 4th of July. Now, values is such a big word. I want to sort of narrow it down. I want to say that values are not something that's untouchable. They're rules. It's a code for what's right and what's wrong. So values, let's think of a value as something like sportsmanship. Sportsmanship is a value, and it can give us a better sense of how a value maybe impacts or comes into our lives. We don't at all times have to embrace the value of sportsmanship. In fact, as we get older, for many of us, we may never again really embrace sportsmanship unless it's, pool or something, throwing, cornhole, something non-contact. Anyway, my point is, if you follow sportsmanship, then you know that there are certain rules. Let's say basketball. You don't double dribble or carry the ball, or you don't walk with the ball. You don't push under the rim. You don't use elbows. I mean, everybody knows this and everybody accepts this, and that's sportsmanship. And so they're accepting that there are certain rules that they will adhere to, and that is a value judgment, and that is what sportsmanship is. But they don't have to have that value on display on the sleeve all the time. So your values come in and out of your life as needed in certain instances, like if you pick up a basketball in this case. Fashion could be many things. Obviously, if you're looking at a culture, if you look at this photograph of these Ukrainian women, you can see that fashion is a binder for them into an indigenous sort of native dress, etc. Culture. There's music and food attendant to that. That's culture. But fashion may also be like if you are driving home from work and you see a kid who has a skateboard on his shoulder, you know he's a skater kid, right? They dress a certain way. They have a fashion and they have a language, right? They have a bind. They're bound by that fashion. They've got their comfortable shoes on. They've got their pants that are super skinny. They might have a chain. They got a shirt, and they've got maybe some kind of like a beanie, and then they got that skateboard. And so that's the fashion we're talking about. And you all have that. Some of you are in scrubs right now. That's a fashion, right? The only thing different about you is what shoes you got on. Are you of the person of the clogs type, or do you wear the running shoes? So like you have like Hoka's on, or what is your shoe choice? But you're all wearing the same fashion, which identifies you in the culture of clinician. Economy also applies to the skater kid who has taken his board, and not that he bought it. That's not what we're talking about. Economy. In economy, we're talking about economy of resources. So someone that takes his own board and paints on it, makes it his own, or her own. That's economy in this sense, and that's a culture. There's a culture of economy. For example, all of the people that are on Eat Seat, these are people who are of a culture of economy in multiple ways. And then there's lifestyle. And so, in terms of lifestyle, this again, I'll stay with the analogy of the skater kid. There's a lifestyle to that, right? Maybe you skip school, or maybe you just brag about skipping school, even though you're an A student. You congregate at a certain place at a certain time. You have a certain lingo. And so there's a lifestyle attendant to being what you identify. It's something you assimilate into and want to do. And then there's knowledge. Now, obviously, knowledge has to be the building block of any culture. But what we mean here is more of a specific knowledge. So it might be the knowledge of a longtime cattle farmer passing on the family business to the next generation. And this might be as much an experiential thing, being and doing together with cattle, versus a language thing, if you get what I mean. And then you would have a similar kind of culture that would arise around creativity. So this might not be a family issue, but it might be more of as they say, a family of our own making. So what's interesting, and y'all, think about this, the United States has more artists, singers, actors, writers, poets, as well as, business leaders and entrepreneurs and engineers. And, we put out more creative content than any other nation. And why is that, do you suppose? I'll tell you, and you already know, cultural diversity. It's because we have all these cultures that are smashed together and have to get along. And part of that friction is what gives rise to the creativity, to the energy that is the United States, that we celebrate rightly on the 4th of July. So stories here would be part of the builder of community, but not maybe in the sense you think, or maybe in the sense you think. So, for example, if you were my grandson, and I have no grandchildren, I would want to indoctrinate you from an early age into Alabama football. Forgive me, Auburn fans. And one of the stories I would have to tell you would be about the goal line stand that I watched when I was 11 years old in 1978, when Alabama beat Penn State for the national title. That's a story that I hold dear, that we in Alabama fandom revere and hold up. And you must know that for entree into the culture. Does that make sense? So that's where stories come into culture. Symbols is perfectly obvious, I think, to all of us. We all understand the power of symbol, the cross, for example, the Star of David. But there are also other symbols that have as much of an immediate meaning, right, and imprint on us as do those. That would be, for example, the Nike swoosh. You see that, you know what it means. It doesn't just mean shoe. What it means is it means be fit, be athletic, be excellent, be the best, do it, don't hesitate, just live your life. I mean, those are all the things that symbol means. And then there are symbols that are attendant to culture. So for example, if you wear a certain kente cloth in Africa, that tells the story of your family and your heritage, just as it does if you wear a certain tartan in Scotland. And in both cases, you might be wearing Nikes with those. Symbols abound. Rituals, and here by ritual, we're not saying so much the big things. We're not talking religion or metaphysics. We're talking about ritual. So think about something that you don't think is a ritual that in fact is. Every year in August, there is new student orientation around the country. And any kid in school goes through it, and any parent with a kid in school goes through it. And it's the same every year, and it happens at the same time every year, and it is generally the same experience every year. It's a ritual. And it's a rite of passage, just as going through junior high school and high school are rites of passage. Getting married, having children, getting your first dog. These are rites of passage. Now, holidays are obviously different. These can be more sort of an organizational culture. So a holiday is going to be something that's identified and recognized by a significant number of people, like Passover. It's not a small thing. It's not something, you don't have a holiday in your neighborhood for Friday, And then there are epic meanings. And now epic meanings, again, I'm not talking religion here, and I'm not talking metaphysics. I'm talking, for the epic meaning, I'm talking about the death of the matriarch of your family or the patriarch of your family. That's an epic meaning. That's when you say, who's going to take this place? What's going to happen to this family? What is my role now? How do things change? That's epic. That's an epic meaning. A funeral is an epic meaning. Community, we've identified by and large, community can be anything. It can be any group of people that share a similar thought, idea, hobby, whatever it is. And I do like to bring y'all things. And so I want to tell you about something that you may like if you're looking for a community. If you may already know about it, but it's a website called Meet Up. And it's not in any way, sundry. It's legit. Meet Up. If you Google it, you can look through and find people that do just about anything. So they're locally in Birmingham. There's several meditation meetup groups. There's quite a few that talk about investing. There's some that talk to, entrepreneurs. There's even a group that it talks about psychedelics, and I assume they talk about them and don't do them. I don't know this because I haven't been, but anyway, you can find anything. And I think if you're looking for a way to get to know people different than you or to learn something new, Meetup might be an opportunity for you. So in consumerism, I want to stick with the back to, well, let's leave the skater boy kid. We've picked on him enough. Consumerism would be his cousin, And this is not the ladies who lunch and shop. Consumerism here means maybe like Comic-Con. Are y'all familiar with Comic-Con? Comic-Con is like a conference for people that like comic books. And this is not a small thing. This is a huge thing. This is millions of people thing. And they all go because they like to buy comics and they like to buy, figurines or whatever it may be. So they go to Comic-Con and they get their photographs made with their superhero friends and get things. And so that's consumerism. But I mean, that's huge. And that's just one of these things. I used to, years ago, I created a haunted house called Sloth Strike Furnace. And we would go to the haunted house conference every March in Chicago when there was still snow on the ground and it was very cold. But we would go to the conference and there was a community of people, even within that niche. You wouldn't think it, but there were people with, their contacts on and black hair and hats and fangs. I mean, but people that had followings. I mean, there's a community of people doing absolutely anything you can imagine, getting together somewhere, if not in a conference like Comic-Con, on Meetup. And then there's media communication. And I sort of touched on this earlier, but were it not for the explosion of social media, we would not be facing the great diversity of cultures that we're trying to assimilate into our greater culture now. And assimilate's really the wrong word. If you're thinking about cultural diversity, we're not looking for assimilation so much as we're looking for understanding and acceptance. And then shared experience is an obvious shared experience, whether that's a work experience or whether you're a deadhead and you've been to 24 Grateful Dead shows, you understand that shared experience is a very binding thing and certainly forms community. So we've talked now about cultures and what makes cultures and the types of cultures among the infinite number of possible cultures. So let's try and get, and I'm sorry I've taken a little bit too much time, let's move our way through diversity. So cultural diversity then is the variety, difference, and abundance of cultures that can be found within the same region or geographical space, i.e. the United States of America, in which they coexist peacefully regardless of their heritage, culture, or tradition. That is cultural diversity. Multiculturalism, which is essentially the same thing, would say that it's the acceptance of various cultures in schools, organizations, businesses, neighborhoods, or cities. So multiculturalism is maybe more of an organizational application, whereas cultural diversity simply is a fact. You didn't miss the code word, Kim. Thank you for bringing it up. The code word is diversity. That's a capital D. Let me type it in here if I can type and talk at the same time. Yes, diversity. Oh, that was to Missy Etheridge. Missy, would you type that for other people, please? Diversity is the code word for the survey on SurveyMonkey. But what we want to say about cultural diversity is we're not looking to assimilate or integrate other cultures into ours. No, that would be what we've seen 250 years of in the US, which is the attempt to assimilate other cultures into white culture or white male culture. And so, no, we're not looking to do that. What we're looking to do simply is just to accept and to treat impartially and fairly, regardless of how someone appears or identifies. And that is the challenge. How do we ethically act in that sense? Well, I'll tell you. So the ethical standards of different countries are different. We've talked about that. And men and women are different. So if you look at business, if you poll, or if not if you do, but if someone did poll men and women in business about a various, variety of topics relating to the ethical or the ethicalness of them, and men and women were fairly standard when it came to I'm putting in the SurveyMonkey link into the chat room, y'all. But when it came to looking at finances, men and women looked at things the same. But when it came to breaking rules in the organization, women view that as unethical, whereas men view that as part of how you get ahead. Now, before you get judged too harshly, the men, and remember, men were born with that. We were born to know that we could do what we wanted because we're men. In Korea and the US and India, business leaders were polled, and it actually came to light that many of the things like poaching software or piracy or sharing insider information in Korea is viewed as ethical because it is about being a good, profitable business. Whereas in the US, those same things are viewed highly unethically. The flip side of that is that in Korea, they would view many companies in America as being unethical because of the way they treat the environment. So the ethics float and change with us. In Japan, which is a homogenous society, they lose 650,000 workers a year because men age out of the system and they do not wish to hire women. It is a societal, and this is thousands of years, y'all, belief that women cannot lead. So if you look at HP, for example, they did a survey in Japan, only 4% of HP leaders in Japan were female, compared to 25% in the US. And I would say, well, I mean, that's not a whole lot better, really. 25%, women are 50% of the population. Why not 50% of the leaders being women? You know what I mean? But anyway, that's how we can hang our hat, say, oh, we're more ethical than they. We're not, all right? And here's the thing, there's a lot of assault on affirmative action these days. In France, they don't have that, but they know for a fact, they did a study, that if you take the same resume in France, and you have one that you put a French name on, and you have one that you put a North African name on, the one that has the French name gets the call back every time, whereas the North African one rarely does. And yet they see that affirmative action would be unfair. Unfair to whom, I guess, is your question. So, I'm sorry, I'm trying to do two things at once. So what we find then is that right action in terms of ethics in the world and in business, which is a little bit a part of what we've talked so far, but in the world, right action is just depends on the situation and the situation, frankly. So Levi's in Bangladesh in the 90s found that they had child labor problem, that their contractors are using children under 14. And so their immediate thought was, well, we've got to, fire all these kids and contractors. But on a closer inspection, they realized that this is natural and expected in that culture, and that many of these 14-year-olds were the sole breadwinners for their families. And so they did not fire everyone. Instead, they found a common ground, a middle ground based on the situation. They kept them basically employed, although not working, while they finished school, and then hired them to work at the conclusion of school. The code word is diversity, Jennifer. Thank you for asking. And so it's hard to say that we're going to, change the world, but can we change ourselves? We have to change our filter, y'all. The way that we look at the world is through a glass. It's a prism. It's a filter. It's our filter, and it shapes how we see people who look differently than us. We need to reflect on our biases and beliefs and ask if we might need to change filters. So the things that would affect you clearly are your background and your religion and your age. I'm affected by those things, your educational level. Spend some time asking yourself, hey, does the fact that I've got my master's in social work somehow make me look at other people differently? Or, hey, because I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, do I look at other Protestant folks differently than maybe I should? And becoming more self-aware then allows you to do what? Allows you to open up to other people. So then you can open your eyes, and then you can do things like talk to someone new. If you see someone in a burqa and you wonder, is it hot in there? Yeah, it might be a little embarrassing, but I don't think it would be necessarily rude to just go up and say, hey, what is your experience in the heat wearing this? And even if it's offensive, I tell you what it also is, it's valuing that person. It's making them feel worthwhile. It's letting them know they're here and present and accounted for. So talk to them and ask questions, and don't be afraid to ask questions. We had on Tuesday, we had a fellow here who was blind, who told us about the issues of the blind in healthcare settings, for example. And I asked him a bunch of dumb questions, like, for example, when I wake up in the morning, I open my eyes and I see the light. But how do you know that you're awake? I mean, that's a dumb question, y'all. But he wasn't offended, and he said, well, I hear. And it made a great point then about the way he hears the world and has a hearing vision. And so by asking a dumb question, I actually opened the door to learning something pretty insightful about the guy. And now asking questions and talking to people is foremost among getting to know people, but you might also find that you want to study a particular religion. And by that, I don't mean take a class. I mean, ask someone that is of a different religion than you if you might attend a service. Or you may end up, unfortunately, attending a service for a funeral or maybe a wedding. And that's not as unfortunate, but or eat new food. Food is, as I said, food is fundamental. It's primal. It's a fundamental gateway in the culture. Try new foods. If you go to a city, look for Ethiopian food. You will not regret it. Or look for Moroccan food. Super interesting. You eat it with your hands. So, there are a lot of interesting food. And if you eat something with your hands, you have a different relationship to food, which means you have a different relationship to the world around you. So food can open doors for you. I appreciate y'all sticking with me. I believe we've about run out of time. I'll leave you with this quote from Mahatma Gandhi, who, as you know, inspired Martin Luther King in his nonviolent protest. Mahatma Gandhi said, our ability to reach unity in diversity will be the beauty and test of our civilization. And so keep that in mind. Open yourself up, study yourself, be confident, and learn about other people and let them know that they exist and they're worthwhile and you hear them and their needs can be met. Thank you all for being here today. I appreciate you being here. As you know, we have a Survey Monkey evaluation tool. That address, for anyone that doesn't have it, is https://www.surveymonkey.com/lowercase r/ all uppercase letters X, N as in Nancy, Y, C as in cat, Y, F, W. And the survey is password protected. That password today is diversity with a capital D, diversity. Please complete these surveys by 6 o'clock today. It makes my life a little easier, if you don't mind. And also make sure that I'll get you your certificate. If you do it late, you may not get it because I may not notice. I appreciate you being here today. It was a testy CEU, one that I hope I did justice. I appreciate you for listening to me. And certainly if you feel that I need to be corrected or educated in any way, do reach out to me, or for any reason at all. And certainly, absolutely, if you have a referral, sbarnes@carepatrol.com. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for all you do. And thank you for making an effort to help others feel good about what they do and their lives. thank you for making an effort to get to know other people. And thank you for being patient with me as I try and work technology.